Critical Blast, where pop culture gets blasted.
And welcome to the show, everybody. My name is RJ Carter, Senior Managing Editor here at criticalblast.com. But it's on this side. It's reversed. It's the camera. My brain can't wrap around that. This is professional broadcasting, and I'll figure it out. Don't worry. But we are glad you're here tonight. And with us tonight, we have Mr. Dave Swartz, who is working on a new kind of crowdfunded comic to me, eschewing the traditional routes. I know other people have done it. I've never talked to anyone who's done it, but we're going to find out how he's going to make it work. And we have him right here with us now. Dave, how are you doing tonight? Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, RJ. It's good to be here.
So the title of the book we're talking about here is Confederate Monster. And why don't you, I'll let you get into telling the people as they come into the stream what this is about and how you came to the idea of making it happen.
Sure. So Confederate Monster is essentially what I tell people is Frankenstein meets the Civil War. So what I've decided to do is play around with the familiar Frankenstein characters, but within unconventional type of environment and setting. So basically what happens in the story is we focus more on Igor, which is unconventional as well. We typically, for Frankenstein stories, tend to focus on Victor or the monster himself. But, for this story, I thought, wouldn't it be interesting to see, what happens to Igor after they reanimate the monster and it flees into the forest? And maybe, for whatever reason, Igor takes the, wealth that he's, kind of accumulated with Victor and working for him, because in my universe, Victor's kind of this wealthy guy with lots of connections. So he takes all this wealth and connections and he travels to America a few years before the Civil War breaks out. So he, establishes himself as this new character, Dr. Daniel Schmidt, where he kind of fakes his credentials and gets into medical school and is able to reestablish himself as a completely changed individual. Then the war breaks out, and a couple years later, his secret's out, and the Confederates find out that he could possibly reanimate their dead army.
That could be a very powerful weaponized science. I'm sorry, you kept saying Igor there, and all I could think of was, it's Frankenstein.
Yes, I am a huge fan of the young Frankenstein version for sure.
Okay, so to be clear about this monster, or rather at least the characters, the doctor and the characters, this is the actual Frankenstein. This isn't a what if Victor von Frankenstein had created the monster in America. He's followed the story as it were, and he's come to America afterwards.
Correct. So this is essentially a continuation of that story. So we still have the established understanding of what we know about that story. But then, we see what happens a little bit later, what happens to Igor, what happens to Victor. But then we also bring back in the monster, and we introduce new characters that, are Frankenstein-ified, if you want to call it that. So it's a really interesting, fun, universe in order to, create a completely different take on the character.
So you are going a different kind of crowdfunding way on this. You're going to do it with Patreon first. How does that work? I know Patreon is a subscription thing. So there's, for my own take, it's like, I want to pay the money and get the book. I try not to get too many subscriptions because I got 11 of them already, and I keep forgetting one of them.
Sure, absolutely. So, in my mind, what I'm doing with the Patreon is I'm trying to cater to the fans that I find that are more interested in creating comics themselves, and also very interested in the process of what goes into creating a comic book. I can't tell you how many times I've been at Comic-Cons and I've had people come up to my booth and they tell me, well, I'm working on my own comic and I've got this and I've got that. Well, if you want to learn more about it, let me help you. You know, that's one of the things that is a big passion in my life. You know, I teach art and comics and design and character development. And I always loved the opportunity to be able to educate and to show people, you know, how to make it a reality. You know, because that's what, you know, I decided to do a few years ago. You know, I used to work in, you know, graphic design, and I was a creative director for many years. And then I just decided, you know what, this is just not what I want out of my life. I have, you know, bigger goals, and I have, you know, bigger, you know, I think ideas that I want to, you know, create a reality out of. So I decided I was going to do comics and see where it takes me. And, you know, I've got a couple of successful books behind me. And now what I'm trying to do is create my own sort of, you know, tribe, if you will, trying to, you know, attract the type of people that I think would be, you know, really interested in the types of content that I have to offer, as well as the types of stories that I have. Because part of the Patreon as well is when you sign up for one of the middle or top tiers, you're going to get a discount on the crowdfunder that I'm going to do at the end for the collected edition. So you will get you know, a little bit of skin in the game when, you know, it comes to the eventual collected edition.
Okay, so aside from the discount, what does a patron get? What are the different levels, and what do they get in return for these levels, as far as, you know, story content goes, or the extras of behind the scenes stuff?
Sure. So every Patreon is going to be able to see the story as it's being created week by week. So I'm going to be doing about 3 to 4 pages every week, and these are fully finished pages. So you're going to be able to, you know, read the story in little pieces as we go, and then for middle tier patrons, you're going to be able to watch videos of me putting things together, as well as commentary. I'm going to talk about, you know, what inspired, you know, the designs of these characters, or the designs of the pages, or the colors that I'm choosing, or anything like that. Because, you know, everything that I do has purpose to it. You know, we're not just throwing things down because we think it looks cool. So you know, again, I like to, you know, educate as much as I can. I think these videos would be a really fun thing for a lot of people. But then the top tier, you're going to actually get exclusive physical rewards. So I'm going to actually send you a monthly package with exclusive prints that are only going to be available through Patreon. You're not going to be able to get them in the crowdfunder at the end, as well as personalized thank you cards with the little 5-minute sketch that I'm going to do in the back, which are also going to be exclusive to Patreon.
Well, that's very cool. That's sort of like pre-crowdfunded perks.
Exactly.
You'll get just because you were in on it from, you know, crowdfunding is getting out on the ground floor. You're actually digging out the sub basement with people here and pouring the foundation.
Right. And you know, part of it for me too is, you know, I've done a couple crowdfunders before, and I've also done them myself, and I've also participated in them. And one of the things I just don't like about it is the fact that sometimes you pay for something, and then you have to wait a year, maybe even longer than that, to really get anything back. So I like the idea of a Patreon where, you know, you get to at least participate in the creation. You get to see it as it's being created piece by piece. You may even get to interact with the creator, which I'm really hoping to do as well with my audience.
Okay. Now, recently, I've seen a number of artists who are in Patreon deciding to pull out of Patreon. I'm not up on exactly what is going on or what Patreon has done to anger some of their people and pull out. I know that Dan Fan has pulled out. I believe I think Richard C. Meyer has pulled out, and it's something to do with, I guess, the payout or the deal that they'd had with the original artists. Are you at all concerned about that? Are you taking that into consideration as maybe migrating to something like Subscribestar or something if you have to?
You know, I am always able to, or I would like to at least think that I'm always able to change if things, you know, aren't going to be working out. So, you know, if something happens and I have to, you know, pivot, then I'll pivot. But, you know, as far as I'm concerned right now, I think everything is, you know, going well. You know, it does take a little bit of time to create traction. And I think a lot of people, they tend to get a little discouraged when they don't see that, you know, immediate sort of, you know, reaction that maybe they were hoping for. Also, it's a lot of work. You know, it's just a lot of work. And if you don't have the time to dedicate to it, then, you know, I think sometimes it's just difficult to keep it up. So, you know, I think this is the best thing for me right now. And if things are, changing in the future, then I, am definitely going to change to meet that demand if people want something different of me.
All right. How far into it are you already? How deep into the story are you with the art and the finished pages? Because I assume you're like, if your subscribers are watching this being built, they're watching page 1, drawn, inked, colored, boom, done. You move on to the next one. So you're not kind of hopping around or inking a bunch of pages and then coming back and coloring them afterwards. I don't know what your process is. You should tell me.
Sure. So, well, right now we have the entire first issues done. So I thought it was very important to get at least the first issue completely done, so that when you sign up for the Patreon, you get to read the first full issue. So in the first issue is actually 36 pages long, so it's quite a hefty first issue. You got a lot of story, and then we're starting on issue 2. So right now I'm doing the layouts for issue 2. That's also part of the whole process. So I'm sharing the layouts as I do them as well. And we're just going to go from there. So exactly like you said, we're going to take it page by page from issue 2 until the end. Right now I have the story clocks in at about 146 pages. So it's about 6 issues long. Yeah. The last issue is another, I like to do it with my type of storytelling. I always loved, a big first issue and a big last issue. So my first issue is, like I said, 36 pages long. And then my second, third, fourth, and fifth are 20 tight. And then the last one is close to 40. I think it's like 38 pages with a couple of little extra things at the end.
Okay, so the 6th issue, 40 page one, that is going to be the last issue of this, what's going to become the collected work then. It's not going to be like a 12 issue omnibus or something.
Right. No, that'll be the end. So it's just going to be a 6 issue run. That's how long the story, worked out to be. I'm kind of a big proponent of the story as long as it is. So, for me, if it's only 6 issues long, it's only 6 issues long. But, like I said, it's 146 pages. So really, page count wise, it's actually closer, to maybe like 7 or 8.
Yeah. Now, since you already know the page count, I mean, is this like you've plotted it for that many pages, or you have these pages done?
I have the scripts written. So typically the way I work, because for those of you who are unfamiliar, I'm doing everything. So I'm writing it, I'm drawing it, I'm coloring it, I'm lettering it, I'm doing all the graphic design and everything else. So I typically like to start with the scripts. I write all the scripts out, so I know exactly where the story is going to go, and then I typically rewrite. So I'm draft 1, 2, 3 until I feel like it's really solid. Actually, just the other week I was rewriting the ending a little bit because I thought I could improve it a bit. So, I might make some changes as I go. I might make subtle changes to the dialogue as I go. I do that a lot. But that's kind of the fun thing for me, being able to do it all myself, is I get to make those adjustments on the fly. Versus if you're working with a creative team, it's very difficult to kind of make those gut, creativity decisions, in the moment.
Yeah. You've just reminded me, when I get off the stream here, I need to call my publisher because I write for the Destroyer series, Remo Williams' character, and he's been sitting on a manuscript for several months now, and I just realized, you know what? I want to change the last 2 paragraphs of that prologue, and since you haven't sent it back to me for rewrites yet, just tuck this in here because I don't know what you've done to everything else, and I don't want to send the whole manuscript again if you have to do it over again. Because you're slow. Right. Sorry, Devin, but you're slow. So yeah, rewriting along the way. So you got it written out to that, but what's your schedule? I mean, what kind of a pace are you at for producing a page at a time? So we can figure out when you'll be crowdfunding the physical book.
Right, sure. So with the first issue, the first, few pages were a bit of a slow go, but, eventually I got my process a bit more refined. To the point where I am able to do a page drawn, colored, lettered in one day.
Okay. And you've got the first issue done. Are they going to stay PDF, or are you going to, why not test the waters with this in the crowdfunded now and just do a physical first issue thing as sort of a, hey, here's the first chapter. We're going to have a collected volume later down the line to draw people into the Patreon.
Well, it's not a bad idea for a little bit down the road. I wouldn't want to do it right now just because I don't want to throw too many things out at the same time. I do want to really see if I can get this to, actually do what I would hope that it was going to do for me. But no, that's, it's a very possible idea. I even had ideas of, doing some, cheaper prints, maybe on like a newsprint, like what you would see from like Alterna. In order to, stick with the style as well. Because, the book itself, I really enjoy being able to stylize it, kind of creating almost like an old monster magazine kind of look for it, which was, very important to me. I originally pitched this story when I pitched Feast or Famine. And the artwork just wasn't right for it. I look back on it now and I realized that I just, I didn't quite understand what I needed for the tone and the mood of the story. And now I spent a lot of time to play around with it and figure it out. And I think I've nailed something that's really, really interesting looking.
Can you show us some of that? Share a screen on it?
Yeah, let me see what I can pull up here. Just bear with me 1 second while I
Sure.
just jump over
and talk amongst yourselves.
I'll just see if I can jump over to my website here.
And my overlay's not sitting on everybody's face this time either. I kind of got the size down right. I'm looking at the big screen now so I can actually see what the video looks like.
Okay. Sorry, my privacy settings I have to redo here for a second. Sorry. I just updated the other day, so when you do that, it's like, oh, you got to redo all your privacy settings.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, every time my computer updated and then it wouldn't boot this morning. So I was in total panic mode. Fortunately, it did go into, it wouldn't boot, it wouldn't repair. And it finally gave me the option of, do you want to restore to a previous point? I'm like, try it, it's a Hail Mary. And that worked. So I'm like, great, I'll just, the computer did not crash and we are still up and alive. So let's see what we got here.
All right, so you can see my screen?
Yes, I can.
Awesome. All right.
We got it here.
Yeah, this is just the, a variant cover that I did for the series. I've actually got several variant covers for the first issue. That's part of what I'm trying to do as well, is really create a robust library of covers and pinup designs for the series. Just, because to me as an artist, when I look at comics, when I buy comics, I'm buying it for the artwork. It's just who I am. So when I create comics, I want to create it, for the types of things I like. So, I like to create these really cool pinup covers, 2-page spreads, that kind of thing. So I'll just sort of quickly, go through some of this. It's a lot of preamble.
Go back first.
I'm sorry?
Go back first, please, and go back to that cover and tell us who those characters are we're looking at.
Oh, sure.
4 different characters.
Yeah. So, the big green guy up here is your familiar Frankenstein monster, although he's sort of rocking this mysterious sort of Jonah Hex type of look going on.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah,
like Mr. Fix-It in the Old West.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so he doesn't come into the story until a little later. I don't think he comes until about halfway through. So we'll get to catch up with him a little bit later on. But this is sort of
when you say halfway through the story, do you mean like into issue 3 or halfway through the first book?
Halfway through the whole story. So into about, I think he comes in around the end of issue 3. So, so then next to him, this mad scientist guy here is Victor Frankenstein. Okay. I was really trying to play around with a lot of interesting facial hair, and so for Victor, I really just envisioned him with this gnarly mustache, almost like like a Yosemite Sam kind of looking thing with, Fantastic Four, Mr. Fantastic kind of gray temples to both his hair and the tips of his mustache. And then below him is my version of the Confederate General Stonewall Jackson, but he has been Frankensteinified. So in my story, his end is a little different than in real history. So in real history, he was killed by friendly fire. And in my story, he actually is blown up by cannon fire. So like half of his body is sort of like, blown up. He's missing an arm and that kind of thing. But then his face is a bit scarred up because of that. So, that's why his face kind of looks like he's looking like a Harvey Dent. So, and then next to him is the main character. This is my version of Igor. However, like I said before, his persona in the story is Dr. Daniel Schmidt. So he's a little bit more of a traditional kind of Civil War character, although he's got distinctive scars on his face that are kind of important to his backstory in the story. My Igor, he does have a bit of a twisted spine and a bit of a deformed face, a cleft lip. However, Victor, over several years, fixes him using his intense knowledge of biology and science, and in doing so, he essentially asks Igor to help him, recreate the monster, to give life to the monster, and to do some pretty ghastly things in order to protect his experiments. So, in my story, Victor and Igor, it's very much of a father-son type of relationship.
Okay. Very handsome-looking Igor. He's not the Peter Lorre,
right?
Kind of character you'd be thinking of.
Yeah. It was important to me because it's important to the character within the story that Igor makes this total transformation, where he's not necessarily that traditional looking kind of hunchback that we're familiar with. That he is more, put together and confident, and he really truly is, a transformed man hiding amongst this, kind of Confederate elite. So, okay, so let's do just a kind of quick go through here. I started out the first issue with a battle, not any particular battle, just sort of a generic sort of battle scene, talking just sort of about the terrible, ugly side of war. So I wanted to make Igor, or in my story, Dr. Daniel Schmidt, a reconstructive surgeon who spends his days creating prosthetic limbs for soldiers that come back, missing parts. So to me, I thought it was an interesting way of tying the character of Igor, this idea of him being deformed and then, being fixed by Victor, into, what he, deems as his purpose in life going forward, to help others who are also, deformed or feel like they're freaks. So then we get to see a little bit of inside Igor, or I'll just keep calling him Daniel from now on, because he's really Daniel at this point. So to me, it was really important for me to establish this office of Daniel's, where he, has all of his prosthetic limbs and equipment, as well as this giant wall of portraits of Confederate soldiers that have come back wounded from war. I did a lot of research to could actually find photographs from the time. So each one of those photographs back there is taken from history.
Nice.
Yeah. So, that's one of the things I always like to do with my stories, is really try to inject as much purpose as I can. I really try not to overlook any details as I build out the artwork and I write the dialogue. So.
Now, does Confederate Monster, the themes and the science and everything involved, does that qualify as steampunk, or is that...
I guess I wouldn't necessarily call it steampunk. I'm sure some others may call it steampunk. I guess I'm going more of a just sort of industrial sort of, I don't know, I guess I don't exactly know how to call it. I will say though, for those who are fans of 90s action adventure movies, one of the films that was highly inspiring to me for just sort of the technology, or at least how I envisioned the technology, was Wild Wild West with Will Smith.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah.
Well,
I wasn't familiar with the show. I grew up with the movie, so then after I watched the movie, I watched the show, and I was like, oh wow, this is just so interesting. So
and much better.
it was just something stylistically that stuck in my head. And I actually there's a scene within the Will Smith movie where they had like a masquerade ball, and I used some of the images from that movie as reference. So later on in this first issue here, there's a little bit of a cheeky scene here, just trying to establish Daniel's relationship with his wife, because she's a pretty important character. But then we kind of move into this masquerade ball, which to me was like super important. I think when I first conceptualized the story, this illustration was just already in my head. So I think I had this illustration already visualized like 4 years ago. So it was a really fun experience actually getting to sit down to create it. So yeah.
That's very nice. I like that raven watching down. Is that supposed to be a real raven? It's going to have some iconography to it, or is that a statue on the tchotchke on the wall there?
Yeah. So to me, it's funny because originally I was gonna make this a Halloween party, like a masquerade ball during Halloween, and it just, the timing of the story didn't really quite work out on the calendar. So I just decided to kind of have this as a generic kind of masquerade ball in July. In the story, the wife of my main character, Daniel, she's trying to get him to kind of socialize more and to become, more part of the elite, because she's a daughter of a senator. So, to her, it was kind of fun because she likes to plan parties and do that kind of thing. So she thought it'd be fun to, create this sort of Halloween in July for people and throw a masquerade ball.
Sure.
And I thought it was also fun to kind of dress her up, kind of looking pseudo like the Bride of Frankenstein. So she's got that very like tall powdered wig that's all painted black with a little wisp of white in there.
That's a nice touch. That's a good Easter egg.
Thank you. Yeah. So, the raven's sort of a prop, and then I have a couple of other, it's kind of hard to see. Let me scroll up. I have a couple of other like Gothic looking, candlesticks and things to kind of make it look a little eerie. But, I just, to me, I thought it was very important to have this masquerade party or masquerade ball party with people behind masks. The whole metaphor of Daniel, kind of hiding, behind this facade, who he really is underneath. So.
Yeah, a lot of this artwork, it's probably because of the time period. It reminds me of Alan Moore's League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, the first book of that. Yeah,
thank you so much. That's actually a pretty high compliment for me. I really loved the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And when I was, it's funny because you should say that when I was, I'll go back here in a second. When I was designing this doctor's office here,
right there reminds me of the cover.
Yeah, exactly. That is exactly what I had in my head when I was putting this together. I don't know where it came from, but I'm glad that you saw that, because that is exactly what I had in mind. So. But I'll just kind of quickly get through some of this other stuff. So there's a bit of a kidnapping. These characters are they come in and out of the story. They're sort of Confederate henchmen in a way, but I shouldn't even say henchmen, because that implies that they're not specialized or skilled, because they're quite skilled. They're sort of the Confederate elite soldiers. So
they have much better masks.
So the masks are representational of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. So red is the war, the green is death, the pale face is famine, and then the Joker kind of looking face is conquest. So for me, it was, there's a lot of different themes throughout the plot, throughout the story, and, it being set during the Civil War, slavery is also, a major part of the story. So, one of the things I thought would be interesting is to play around with this idea of mixing slavery with religion. So I thought, well, what if these guys kind of take on the guise of the Four Horsemen, when they're going around doing their dastardly deeds at night, because they only kind of operate at night. So they are kind of hired, by the Confederates to come out here and do particular tasks. So they're not necessarily soldiers, more kind of mercenaries. I is what I kind of envision.
All right. And the war, by the way, is actually going on still during this time of the story. This is not like immediately post-war or anything.
This is supposed to be like right at the end of the war. So it's like the sort of the writings on the wall for the Confederates. They feel like they're really losing. Because one of the things that I read when researching this story was that the Confederates had a lot of supplies and weaponry. They just didn't have the men to operate them. So, that to me was just like a light bulb went off. Like all they needed was bodies. So why not, reanimate them? So that's kind of where the whole idea kind of came to be. But yeah, no, that was definitely that's something I researched, when I was coming up with the story.
And with that, I could see them saying, with that technology, assuming that everybody kind of lives through your first adventure, when they lose their slaves, well, they could just reanimate those.
It's something that could be explored. I will admit that's not necessarily something I put in the story, but that's not a bad idea. It could definitely be something that could be explored in the future, because I always love ending my stories with a little, maybe something's going to happen next, that kind of thing. So with this story, I do tease a little bit of what happens with Daniel after the whole, story concludes. And then I also tease kind of what happens with the Confederate leadership after it all concludes. So.
And of course, when it all concludes, the country loses a president that they would perhaps not mind having back. So
there you go. So it's a very I think it's an interesting time period in which to explore these types of fantastical things. I think before we jumped on the live, you briefly mentioned thinking about other examples of this type of history meets classical characters, and you mentioned the Abraham Lincoln vampire hunter. And I had similar types of thoughts in my head as I was putting this whole story together, because I do put Lincoln in towards the end. He comes in towards the end, so there's some interesting fun things that can be done with these types of ideas set in a Civil War type environment. So
very cool. Well, I'm liking what I'm seeing here, and
thank you.
I'm sure everybody else will be too. As we scroll through here, how far? If I wanted to put an X on my calendar to say, hey, go look for Dave's crowdfunding on Kickstarter or Indiegogo or whatever he picks.
Sure.
This is the day I want to get in there and start funding it. When are you thinking you're going to see something like that out there?
Well, with the schedule the way that it is, I would say to be more comfortable. I don't want to rush it, but I would say to be more comfortable, I would put it between December and January, because, like I said, it's going to be quite a long road to get from 36 to 146. But things could change, the pace could pick up, and we could be seeing it maybe the end of November. So the original plan was to try to get it in the end of October, the beginning of November, but as things go, the schedule got a little bit too long. So it's right now, I would say it's probably going to be somewhere in December, but maybe into the beginning of January.
That's actually sooner than I was thinking it was going to be, because I figured page a day pace, and I didn't know exactly where you're at now, and I knew it was going to be 144 pages or
Mhm.
so. I figured, next June.
Oh no, I can get it done a lot sooner than that. I'm pretty confident in that for sure.
Very cool. Yeah,
Here's a
that's
big
something that I'm
reveal.
going to want a physical copy of for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So
Oh,
yeah, this is just a fun reveal for your viewers. Just I I wanted to kind of play around with body parts and like detaching things and that kind of thing. Obviously, since it's Frankenstein, so Daniel's wife gets captured by the Confederates by using the Four Horsemen, and then they send this little care package for him to attract his attention and have him meet them at this ranch where they're gonna confess that they know who he really is and that they have a plan for his skills.
and that's her finger.
Oh, that is her finger, yes. And I wanted to make
Oh.
sure it was the wedding ring finger, so the wedding ring was still attached.
Oh well, yeah. That just really drives it home for him.
Absolutely. So that's all I got to show right now because I don't want to give all of my secrets away for the first issue. But here's a little fun little image I did.
Oh, let me bring that back up here. Now that's is that Lee on horseback there?
No, so that would be Stonewall Jackson.
Oh, okay, that's Jackson.
Yeah,
I couldn't tell because I couldn't see the green face.
Yeah, no, for sure. It's funny. I did this illustration about 4 years ago when I first pitched the story, and I thought the drawing was still pretty solid. So I just decided to update the coloring, and I thought the whole thing turned out way better. So it's kind of interesting. If anyone wants to see it, you can check out my social media pages. I posted about it I think a couple days ago. So. You can check out the before and the after of this variant cover that I did.
Yeah, and we do have the link to your Patreon, very first line in our description below. So encourage people to hit that up, get in there, get involved in the Patreon so you can get the discounted rate on the 144 page. It's going to be a big book, guys. It's going to be thick.
Yeah, I'm super excited for it. I have big plans. One of my major goals, though, I think beyond anything else, is I really, really, really want to make a hardcover version. It's probably going to be very expensive, but it's just I have a copy of the Verse Claws book by Grant Morrison and Dan Mora, and it is just amazing the hardcover they did with the foil on the edges. So.
Yeah, that one is a beautiful book. You can do hardcovers. They are more expensive, but Critical Blast Publishing we've done hardcover. This is Stephen J. Mitchell's Bulletproof Origins. It's a hardcover, not a graphic novel. It's a young adult superhero novel.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also in our description below, guys. If you want to pick this up on Amazon, if you liked the old classic Ditko Spider-Man and him being a smartass. You got a 16-year-old protagonist who wakes up on his 16th birthday to find out that he's bulletproof, literally. He's invulnerable. So he decides that he lives in a world of superheroes. He's going to go become one. Unfortunately for Cody Haywood, he's got the attention span of a ferret on pixie sticks. So his friends have to help keep him focused and alive because indestructible is not quite what it's cut out to be when you've got a group of terrorists who want to disassemble you and find out how to make themselves indestructible as well.
Yikes.
And there's no one reanimating anybody in this book. So.
That's great. No, I love that concept. That's interesting.
So I didn't see a lot of Victor in those opening pages. We're still focused on Igor, which makes sense because he is the main character.
Right.
I'm assuming he comes in issue 2 or say, I'm going to tell people what's in issue 2 without having even seen it. I'm going to assume that Igor's like.
You would be correct.
It's like Igor's going to say, they have my wife. I need your help. They want this. Come help me. And I have no idea what Victor's doing all this time with his own experiments? Because surely he's not reanimating things. He's learned his lesson.
Well, he may not even be in his lab anymore. So who knows where Victor winds up? And that's the fun part. He does come into issue 2. He doesn't come in at the beginning of issue 2. He comes in more towards the middle, towards the end. But he is definitely part of the story going forward, because I really thought it was going to be an important to establish the relation, or I maybe just say reestablish the relationship between Victor and Igor after several years of being apart. I thought that was kind of an interesting, fun thing that we can explore in the story, because to me the story is very much about the relationship between Victor and Igor. However, I think the story overall is really more of a story about just fathers and sons, or mentors and mentees.
Okay, now when you talk about being told that I can't be heard very well, so apparently this mic is not working very well. Dave, can you hear me okay?
I can hear you pretty well.
Okay. Canuck, I don't know what the problem might be out there in viewing land, but I will speak up as louder as I can. But when you talk about Igor being like a son to Victor, Victor already has a son in almost a literal fashion, which is, of course, the monster. He created him. That's father. So do you explore the filial relationships between Igor and the monster? Is there a rivalry between them?
There's an interesting relationship between the two of them for sure, because they both have very different perspectives about who Victor is and the type of person that he is. So Igor tends to sort of keep Victor on a pedestal and look up to him as a very smart, intelligent, bright individual and great man, because after all, in my story, Victor saves Igor from a life on the street. But the monster has a very different viewpoint on Victor. So, it's again, like you said, a very interesting, relationship between the two of them that, we do get to explore, but I wouldn't say it's a prominent part of the plot, but it's there.
Okay. Do you go back and revisit the history in any sort of a flashback scene? Do we get to go across the Arctic and see that great chase that ended the original novel?
Should I say? I will say there is a bit of a scene in the Arctic, but it is not the traditional scene that you're used to. It comes in at the very end, but it is there is a bit of a nod to that, yes.
All right, very cool. Well, like I said, I want to read this one now. Get it done. I want to order this right now and have it shipped. And I will definitely be hitting the hardcover on that one. So I think, that kind of a gothic story, epic length, deserves a hardcover version.
Oh yeah.
Do you have you given any thought to, aside from the discounted entry rate for those who are on your Patreon, and the hardcover obviously is going to be a top tier, but have you given any thought to what kind of other things might be accompanying the book as far as entry levels go for when you do crowdfund it?
Sure. I have a few ideas. We had talked before about, maybe possibly printing individual issues. I thought that would be fun. Doing it on newsprint, I thought would be awesome, just to kind of fit with the whole style. I was also thinking about doing black and white versions of the book, just because I am a huge fan of that. I own a lot of black and white variants of graphic novel collections. So I just would really love to do that as well. I even had an idea of doing, those sort of magic Halloween portraits where like you look at it one way and then it changes when you look at it another way.
Yes, I do.
Doing that for some of the characters in the book. It would take a little bit of research to figure out how to do it, but that was an idea I had. And then I was also thinking about even maybe doing little mini 3D printed busts of Victor and the monster, or maybe even some of the Confederate generals. Who knows?
I can set you up with that guy.
Awesome. Sounds good.
There's a guy in the I'm going to say the crowdfunding community because I don't know where you sit on the traditional or the current I crowdfund comics political spectrum, but there is a segment that's off maligned that there's a fellow in there who's very good at doing 3D prints, and he's shown me some of the work that he's done for his character. And in fact, the second issue of his book, actually I think it's the third issue of his book that he's putting out now, he showed me the 3D spaceship that is going to be part of it, and the son of a bitch is 2 feet long. So it's going to be, yeah, it's a major undertaking. So I hit the newsletter on that one because I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get that ship.
For sure. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. It's amazing what we can do with technology and the fact that we're all connected. So, you know, if you know somebody who can really do something awesome, he can maybe make it happen.
Yeah, we've got this wonderful social infrastructure that's set up here now, and you know, as it helps us find people we like and can work with a lot faster, and it helps us find people we hate a lot faster.
Sure.
Sometime we're going to evolve and find a balance.
I would hope so. You know, that's kind of what I'm all about. You know, just trying to find a balance.
Yeah. All right. Well, I want to say that I should be asking more questions here, but I've seen so much, and we've gotten kind of deep into it. And I know you don't want to reveal too much more because this is something that you're piecing out. And the more questions I ask, the more I'm risking having you give off something for free that your Patreon people are being like, hey, I'm paying for that.
Right. Exactly.
So we don't want angry customers. So I think I'll just wrap it up early here.
Sure.
And again, remind people that we do have the link to Confederate Monster. The Patreon site where they can get involved with that is down there. Sign up for that. Get in at a tier where when this does come to, have you considered which one? Kickstarter, Indiegogo? Do you have a preference?
You know, I haven't made a decision yet. I've done both. I did, Kickstarter a couple times. I did Indiegogo the last time for my last crowdfunder for the collected edition of Feast or Famine. I like qualities of both. I guess I haven't quite made my final decision yet, but we'll see.
All right. Well, folks, hit the Patreon link so that when it does come to a crowdfunding site near you, you will be able to get in there at a discounted rate and go for that high tier. Get that hardcover. I don't know anybody yet who's done a hardcover graphic novel in the current community of crowdfunding. I'm sure there's probably somebody, but
probably. But I'm definitely.
But this will be unique. So go hit that up. Dave, it's been a pleasure having you on the show, and I'm going to go sign up for your newsletter at the very least, and I'm going to keep an eye out for that book. And when it does come out to crowdfunding, we will. We'd love to have you back on again and push that thing to hit its goal.
Awesome. Appreciate you having me, and appreciate the support. It's been fantastic.
Glad to do it. We will see you later, sir.
Take care.
You too. Bye.
Hi, thanks for stopping by for another Critical Blast video. The internet is a big place, and we know there are lots of other places you could be other than here, and we appreciate you being here immensely. If you enjoyed this kind of content, we hope you'll return for more. If you click the subscribe button, you'll get a little notification of when we produce new video content. If you would like to help the channel out, there are many ways to do so. Just visiting our main hub, criticalblast.com, will do wonders. But if you're more of a show me the merchandise type of person, there are links in the description of this video to our t-shirt shop, as well as links to Amazon for the books we publish under the Critical Blast Publishing imprint, including the urban fantasy anthology Gods and Services and the YA superhero novel Bulletproof by Stephen J. Mitchell. Thanks again for visiting this video. We hope you had a blast.